Welcome to the Chaos Sector. In today's episode, we continue to expose the mainstream media. Let's just get right into it.
President Trump's team is pointing to newly released surveillance video from State Farm.
Did she say State Farm? She did. How do you make that mistake? Is she dyslexic? She just looks deceptive. Perhaps the cat has her tongue because the propaganda is so blatant. Off to a bad start, more to come.
As evidence of election fraud, our chief investigator, Brendan Keefe, joins us. Brendan, another important opportunity here to separate fact from fiction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we first saw the video in yesterday's state Senate hearing, but state investigators confirm they've had this video for weeks and determined that Fulton was legally counting ballots. But there is more to the story.
Yeah, I saw 4 suitcases come out from underneath the table.
Supporters of the president are calling it Suitcase Gate.
We call it a suitcase.
But those are not suitcases. 11 Alive has confirmed they're the standard ballot containers used by Fulton County.
The video shows is that they have pulled out plastic bins from underneath the desks. Those are bins that they keep under their desks near the scanners.
They've investigated this repeatedly, that they had a monitor on site the entire time. And frankly, this has been debunked for weeks by our Secretary of State's office.
I doubt he's
What
seen the video.
evidence?
Your officials need to watch the video.
They did. The video is not new. State investigators reviewed the State Farm surveillance tapes weeks ago. Gabriel Sterling with the Secretary of State's office tweeted the 90-second video of election workers purporting to show fraud was watched in its entirety by Georgia Secretary of State investigators, shows normal ballot process.
Now wait a minute, they claim the state investigators reviewed the surveillance weeks ago, from that point, right? But let's travel back and watch that very hearing. Warning, there is a loudmouth who is clearly showing signs of nervousness.
Yes.
Senator Parent.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. We heard from the Secretary of State's office earlier, just a couple hours ago, that they've investigated this repeatedly, that they had a monitor on site the entire time. And frankly, this has been debunked for weeks by our Secretary of State's office.
I doubt he's
What
seen the video.
evidence? Then I think the courts will probably be able to handle this once you present your evidence to them. As I'm aware, there have been about 40 lawsuits dismissed already. And according to the law of the state of Georgia, we do not have the power to submit alternate electors. The provision in the law is quite clear at 21-501F.
Is there a question?
Senator, we'll ask questions. We'll have a time for statements at the conclusion. If we
Yeah, my question is, the question is, since this has been debunked repeatedly, what evidence can you give to us that counters what our elections officials have presented us with only an hour ago?
You just saw it. Your officials need to watch the video.
What about the fact that they say that they had a monitor there the entire time?
I can't speak for them.
Well, thank you.
They did not have the video.
They said they had a monitor the whole time.
Okay.
You're looking at the room.
There's no Secretary of State.
Then maybe we should invite them back in.
Did you hear her tone? Why does she seem agitated about this issue? Based on that tone, we can assume she has knowledge of something suspicious, or even criminal. The tone indicates a defensive, or better yet, a defiance of the evidence presented. This only magnifies the allegations of criminal activity in that surveillance. But let's continue.
All right. Well, we may need to do that. Senator Tillery. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, Senator Parent, one more question.
Did you mention that Chairman Pitts was there, or you spoke to him about being there during this episode?
I was not there. This is a witness affidavit that says he was there.
Okay,
Almost up until he was one of the last people to leave. Not as late as the witnesses that we have, but he was there.
So he just told us he wasn't there just an hour ago.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
One of the witness affidavits says he's there.
Well, okay. So we heard from.
Senator Brass?
Can I ask one more?
No, ma'am. We need to move on. We have a lot of questions.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Gooch?
Maybe a question for Senator Parent. I heard you say several times this has been debunked, but I also just heard that this video just appeared last night. So how could it have been debunked?
Well, my response, not being an expert, is that these very allegations came up right away after the election, almost a month ago, and have been repeatedly discussed by the Secretary of State's office, including everything that we're seeing here.
But is this
And
not
there have been explanations for all of it.
is this not the first time this video has been shown?
I believe that this is the
Yes.
first time this video has been
Yes,
seen.
and
It
the,
is.
And
That's
the news
correct.
media hasn't seen this video or have not?
They have
put it
not,
out. They have not
because
put
I've
it out.
been in contact with counsel for the State Farm.
Now this is directly from that hearing, the news so cunningly cherry-picked out of. They wanted to convince their viewers that the surveillance had already been examined by state investigators, and the theory of nefarious activity, or criminal activity, had been debunked. Elena Parent, the babbling buffoon, was clearly showing signs of suspicion. As you heard, individuals confirmed that the surveillance had never been viewed prior, and in that hearing is when it was originally seen. Yet Elena Parent and the news claimed that state investigators had already viewed that material. Now, if you hadn't followed the election and these elements surrounding it, that news segment would appear to present facts about that hearing and the investigation. How sickening is the mainstream media, because they clipped out from that very hearing, pushing the narrative that the surveillance had been viewed and there was no evidence of criminal activity, yet left out the exchange that Elena Parent had with other state officials regarding when that surveillance had been viewed. Once again, so this can sink in. The news viewed that hearing in its entirety. So they viewed exactly what you just observed regarding the surveillance. Instead of reporting honestly, they decided to manipulate their viewers. What do you expect from corrupt media? Lucky for you, we're here. Now let's revert back to that news segment. You should see them totally different now that you viewed what actually was said and proven.
Leaving were those who opened the ballot envelopes, and once they were done processing that batch, they went home.
At about 10 o'clock, there was one person working the polls who told everyone in the room to leave.
They began letting certain people go. No announcement was ever made to leave, for anyone to leave.
Was anyone actually told to leave, or just that they were done counting? Republican monitors claim they were forced out.
They were made to leave, so it was done in contravention of the statute.
Both 11 Alive journalists on site that night independently confirmed to me that they were not told to leave.
11 Alive is claiming that they interviewed staff and that election workers never told poll watchers to leave. But those very poll watchers have submitted affidavits stating the contrary. So who do you believe? A news station refuting that allegation, or individuals who were there and submitted affidavits regarding that incident? Due to what has already been proven, it's highly likely the latter occurred.
But they were told counting was done for the night.
Fulton County, they were telling us that their absentee ballot vote counting, their workers went home from that this evening. They'll be back around 8:30 in the morning.
And why are they only counting them whenever the place is cleared out with no witnesses?
This part is true. The press and the party monitors were not given notice that counting would continue into the early morning hours, and they should have been. The Secretary of State says one of its monitors was present. The counting of those heavily Democratic absentee ballots did result in a big batch of numbers coming in from Fulton County in the 1 a.m. hour on election.
And they should have been? You do realize that because they didn't, it's illegal, right? This is what happens when you can't deny, wait for it, the damn facts. It is illegal to count ballots without poll watchers and the media present. The fact that they didn't notify anyone proves the case for Orange Puppet, hands down. It doesn't matter if those ballots were legal, all poll watchers and the media have to be present if any ballot counting is taking place. And it only indicates that those ballots were not legal, which justified why they chose to do it when nobody was there to watch. And the news claiming that workers had left and Republican poll watchers were not forced to leave? Is this believable if they counted ballots with nobody there to monitor this activity? Negative. They told the poll watchers and the media that they were done counting for the day. But there were stragglers who were told to leave. Just so happens, this news station had their so-called journalists there to bring confirmation as damage control in their news segments. Corruption. But because the obvious is displayed right in front of you, in surveillance, they have to acknowledge the illegal activity during that time frame, which essentially destroys 11 Alive's attempt to refute the allegations of criminal activity. The needle in the haystack is this very acknowledgement of illegal activity. Everything else is just a bunch of colorable propaganda. We will return with more. This is the Chaos Sector.